Wanted to do a quick video about Don't Call Me Crazy. I'm so glad that despite having to be up at 4 o'clock this morning that I stayed up and watched it, because I felt like BBC Three did superbly with it. I felt like it raised so many issues and so many points of discussion, and it's another reason to talk about mental health, and especially to talk about teenage mental health. And I think the young people that were involved in the filming of the programme and the young people on the McGuinness unit in Manchester are so utterly brave, and they don't realise how brave they are in being able to talk about it and talk out loud and, be inspirations in some way to young people to go, you know what, like, I have OCD or I have anorexia or I suffer from depression, yet that isn't me and I am more than that, that illness. And I think what it does is it creates a conversation for young people to have. And one thing I think massively in talking out about my own problems is that it's all very well for me to be 28 and talk about my problems, but for a 14 or 15-year-old, I can imagine how hard that is, on top of the usual teenage peer pressure and wanting to be the same as everybody else and fitting in, and then actually underneath knowing that you're really struggling, or that you self-harm, or that you starve or binge and purge. And I think the conversations that need to be had for teenagers are, that it's okay to be going through this, and it's kind of acceptable, and it's not something to be ashamed of. And actually, in order for young people to talk out about mental illness, I think it needs young people to lead the way. And I felt like BBC Three really highlighted the strength of some of the young people on the McGuinness unit. And I think that if we can keep conversations going between young people, and and the stigma at school and between their friends is reduced, then it's gonna only help situations. Because people that struggle when they're 13, if they get help at 13, it means it won't, go into their 20s and their 30s and manifest, later on in life. And hopefully, they can find out what their problems are and their issues, and work on their self-esteem and work on ways to boost that, and have more open conversations with their friends at sleepovers, at parties, and going, you know what, guys, I really feel like shit, and I'm really struggling with this, and I don't like this about myself, or or actually I love this about myself. And I think if more young people can have those conversations, with each other, then it's going to reduce the amount of the young people that have to go to the McGuinness unit, or or it means there's going to be less adults with problems that have just festered away through their teenage years. And I'm talking from experience here, because I know that if I, at 14 or 15, had talked to people more about how real the anxiety was that I felt, and how real the feelings of not being good enough, and feeling fat, and not thinking that I was comparable to my friends, if I'd spoken up as a teenager about them, then it's quite easy for me to sit here in 28 and go, well, maybe I could have, what if I'd spoken, maybe I wouldn't have ended up where I was at 26. But basically, I think that it's all very well adults having these conversations and, talking about our problems and where we've come from and where we are and how we recovered. But I think what is vital here, and is what I really hope that the It's a Mad World series does on BBC Three, is start those conversations with young people, kind of reduce the stigma for young people to talk about mental health, enable them to speak up and say they're struggling, and no, it's not just a normal teenage thing, I really do feel like this, and to be assertive enough to go to their GP and say, no, it's not just something that's a teenage thing, I do feel bad and I need help. And yeah, like I said, I felt that the conversations on Twitter after the programme and during it, it's got two sides. There's people that are struggling already that may have found it triggering. There's elements of it that really upset me and that were too close to home for me to watch, and that actually is, that are still with me today. And as I went to bed last night, there was things that I was worrying about from watching the programme, and the self-doubts I have, or things that reminded me of situations. But it's making us think, and it's making me talk, and I'm hoping there's teenagers today that have gone into school and that are talking about it. And yes, there's going to be people that laugh at the young people that were on the programme, and there's going to be people that still use casual stigma, that still bully people for self-harm or for bulimia or anorexia. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be somebody, hopefully, in that school playground, or in that in their break time, or in their classroom, that goes, you know what, actually, we shouldn't be laughing at this person. We shouldn't be making this person's life any harder by giving them a hard time about their mental illness. And, you know, eventually, hopefully it triggers down and filters through that, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of if you're struggling with a mental illness, and that it is something we talk about, and it is something that you can get help for. And the last point I want to make is that watching the programme yesterday and seeing Beth at the meal time and seeing Beth take 20 minutes to have a sip of Ensure just reminded me of so much the way I was a year ago. And you know what, a year ago I wouldn't have thought where I am today, and you know, hopefully in a year's time I won't be where I am today. And I just really can't tell people enough that it does get easier. That first bite is that terrifying, that first meal is that terrifying, that initial leap of faith you have to make, and that initial trust you have to have in the team that are helping you is terrifying. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a good thing, and sometimes still it doesn't feel like a good thing for me, but it is, and it does get easier. And if I could kind of take you and show you that, and like let you live my, you know, my recovery myself, and I can't explain what I mean, but it does get easier, and it doesn't feel like it at the time, and it is that terrifying, and that mouthful, that pea, that carrot just feels horrible, and like you're never going to get past that. And last night made me think, well, actually, yeah, I doubt myself, I doubt my recovery, I doubt where I'm going or where I've been or where I'll be, but actually one thing I am really sure of, and the more I think about it today, the more I realise this, is that it has got easier. And no matter how much Anna wants to tell me that that's because I've lost, you know, that I've lost control, it's because I've gained control. The reason I can do the things I can do today, and the reason I can have my lunch without really thinking about it, isn't because I was faking when I was thinking about it. It's because recovery, and embracing recovery, and trusting my team, and restoring weight, and really trying for recovery, and believing that I can recover, has enabled me to build up the tools to do that. And I just hope that what yesterday's programme does, and what the Mad World series does, is really make young people believe that they are stronger than their illness, and that there is, you know, something beyond that fear, and that fear does subside. And hopefully it does two things: it helps the young people that are suffering, and it helps the people that aren't suffering from a mental illness to actually try and get an insight into how that person's feeling. And I think it makes us even more understanding and compassionate about each other. And I think, you know, the people I've spoken to about mental health that hadn't got a clue before I opened up about mine, you know, if they can go on and help one other person, or, you know, just ask somebody if they're okay, then I feel like my job's done. And, you know, and hopefully there, like I said, there's people in classrooms this morning that watched Don't Call Me Crazy last night and are having conversations about mental health and about mental illness. And hopefully that conversation today turns into them asking if they're okay tomorrow, and that friend might say no, and that might enable them to start a conversation and get help. And I feel that nothing or anything that raises those conversations is brilliant, and I really think hats off to BBC Three, and I can't wait to see the other episodes. Okay, stay strong.